Hey, I'm Shay. Welcome to our home practice. I'm so glad that you have decided to join me today. We are working our way through a foot series. That sounds weird. That's not what we're doing. We are working our way through a series about our foundations. And today we're going to talk about the feet. That's what I meant to say. So let's go ahead and get started. You might have a couple blocks handy. If you don't, you might have a couple books. And you might have a blanket, okay? So just kind of have some of those things nearby. If you decide you might like to use them, come to a seat. Okay, so we're going to practice for about 30 minutes. This is a nice beginner-focused class talking about basically the foundations underneath of us. And we're going to start by touching our feet. Okay, so with the right leg in front, okay, we're just going to grab a hold of our right foot and give it a nice little massage. And if you find yourself like this is not an easy position to be in, if this is already off the bat like frustrating because the seat doesn't feel easy, find a seat that does. A chair. Find something that works for you, that you can maybe grab a hold of your foot and give yourself a nice little massage. Okay. Now, as we're kind of giving ourselves a little massage, a little foot massage, I just kind of want you to notice, like, there is the balls of the feet. There is the arch of the foot. There is the heel of the foot. And when we are on the feet, we've got to start to use them more intelligently. Oftentimes, I'll hear yoga teachers talk about the four corners of the feet. And if you take a little gander here at your foot, you will notice it more looks like a tripod. It more looks like a base with 3 points of contact and not 4. So I think about like the top half of the foot or the ball of the foot kind of being the 2 top points of your tripod, and then the heel being the bottom base of that tripod. And I think tripods are usually considered one of the most stable bases there are. And if you think about using all 3 points of contact as evenly as you can when they're on the floor, I think that will make being on your feet a lot more useful. Okay. And then we're just going to switch to the other side. And really, all this is kind of doing is giving you an awareness of what is going on when you're on your feet. Oftentimes we only think about like what's going on up here rather than thinking about where all of that stems from. So your base is really important. Now, along with the 3 points of contact, there is also an arch of your foot. And in architecture, a dome or an arch is considered a means of support for that structure. So when that arch is in architecture, when you see that in the wild, if you will, those are used for support. And the arches of our feet kind of work the same way. They're domes. They are the first dome of our body, the first dome of our structure. So when we think about using the points of contact of the foot more firmly, but also lifting the dome, you can start to think about a more stable structure. Okay, so just we're starting off with a little bit of a foot massage. Okay, now switch legs again. So that right leg is in front, and I want you to just extend that right leg forward or maybe even a little bit wide and have that left knee bent. And I want you to notice the positioning of the feet matter too. Like whenever you're on them or wherever they're oriented, they're going to matter for the structure itself. Okay, so just note, I'm going to fold in a second, just take a nice little easy fold, but I want my toes to be pointed up toward the sky, right? My knee and my toes are going to be going in the same direction. Anytime, I want them to always be working together. That's a good thing, okay? So with those pointing toward the sky, I also want you to press down into that heel, press down into your hips, your sits bones. Everything that's on the floor is considered a base. Use it. Right? Usually we're like, how deep can I fold? It's like more, how deep can you press? How much can you use your base? Okay? So just kind of easy, walk your hands out in front of you. When your body tells you to stop, stop. Extend a little more through your spine by using your base, right? Pressing a little bit more into your base. And then possibly walking a little bit more forward from there, getting a little bit more of a stretch out of that stuff. Great. And then all the way back up, and you're just going to switch sides. Nice and easy. You're going to extend through that left leg. Right knee is bent. With the toes pointing toward the sky, I want the knee to be in the same position, right? There's kind of nice orientation going on here. Okay. Now, before I walk forward, I'm going to lift. And to lift, I have to press. I have to have a really firm base underneath of us. So not just our feet on the floor, but whatever is touching the floor. That's your base. Use it. And then the hands will walk a little forward. And then once I'm like, okay, I can't go any further. Don't go any further. Press a little bit more, have a little bit more upright of a structure, and then start to crawl yourself a little more forward, possibly. Take a few slower breaths where you are. Right, just starting to connect with the whole system. Awesome. And then all the way out of there. Cool. Now, I would like to do bridge on our backs, but before we come onto our backs, I want to set our feet first, right? Just like I said, the orientation of the feet is going to matter with the orientation of the knees, and we want them to be going in the same direction. And when we come to our back, it's harder to see that stuff. It's harder to have proprioception about where that stuff's going. So I just want you to take your feet as wide as your hips, if not a little bit wider. So this is my front, right? I'm not here. I'm not way out here. Sorry. But I've got a nice width to my base. Width to your base matters, right? You want to use your base. I'm going to start sounding like a broken record. So I want you to take your feet a little bit wider than your hips, and I want you to turn your toes out just a little bit. Notice how the knees are going to go in the same direction. That's what you want, okay? Heels a little bit closer towards your butt. Most of the time I see too long of a distance in a bridge pose. The feet will be way out here, right? So I want you to physically look at your feet, draw them as close in as you can, and it'll be easier to do so when you get on your back, so don't worry about that too much. But you're just going to kind of draw your feet in as close as you can. Take your toes wide so the knees can go too. And then I'm going to slowly start to come all the way down onto my back. Yeah. And then I can take my feet a little closer. It's a little easier to do so. But I've already had the proprioception of what this stuff is doing as I'm doing it. Okay, so toes out, knees wide. Grip the sides of your mat. You can always go and watch my bridge tutorial on a prior video. I'm going to try to plug that. Hands will grip the mat. Shoulders will hug together. Feet will press down. Okay, so your base matters. And then from your base, you're going to lift. If you still feel really tight in the hips, you might need to turn the toes out a little bit more. You might need to walk your base a little wider. When in doubt, widen it out. Widen that foundation out. It will give you a better situation. Okay, so you're just finding an easy breath, a little bit longer than you normally take them. And then on an exhale, all the way back down. We'll do that one more time, but just between sides, just pause, or between rounds, just take a second to breathe. Just take a second to exist. And then once again, toes and knees turned a little wide, feet press firmly down, hands grip, and then I use my base. I use everything that's pressing into the floor. I press it more, and then I can lift from that base. Sorry about that. Your tripod base is pressing down. And then on an exhale, you'll lower it all the way back down. Again, just pause. You can knock the knees in, or you can take the knees wide and the feet together. Great. Okay. All the way back to a seated position. You can either rock and roll along your spine a few times, or come to a side. And then we'll come into all fours, tabletop position. And I always like to use a blanket because my knees are a little bit wonky. And since they're going to be my base here for a second, I want to make sure that they're supported. I want to make sure that I can keep doing this more than just today, okay? So I'm going to take my blanket, I'm going to pad up my knees, I'm going to walk my hands to the top of the yoga mat, okay? Now, when I'm on my hands, I want to use them like I would use my feet, right? So I want to think about my hands being my base in a tabletop position, and I want to think about really using them by pressing the hands firmly down, sending the tailbone back, reaching the head forward. Nice. And then from your base pressing, I like even my toes to be tucked under for even more of a base. I want you to just start to move through a few cat-cows, right? Rounding and opening up your spine. And if you want to start to let the breath get a little bit longer here too, that would be nice. But just notice the movement that's happening in my spine is happening because my base is strongly pressing the floor. We kind of forget about that. Not just physically, but sometimes even mentally, of like, where am I coming from? Why am I doing this? What do I believe to be true? What is my foundation for my life? And how can I be more honest about those times, about the life that I'm leading outside or off my yoga mat? She casually asks you while we are working on feet. A few more times. Just take your time. Just breathe. You're here to feel good in your body, and we do that by finding a base, a foundation to work from. Great. Okay. Now pause. I want you to find neutral, okay? And I want you to extend that right heel back behind you. And as we start to change the base, we have to make sure that what is our base is as firm as it can be, okay? So as that right leg reaches out, I'm going to try to keep everything level, hips and torso, and then I'll walk my left hand forward, and I'm going to keep those on the floor for a second. But as I start to lift them up, obviously, the base is going to change. It's going to get smaller, okay? So we have to think about this from the floor, okay? So press the hand, press the knee, and then we'll lift that outstretched leg, we'll lift that outstretched arm, right? And as the base changes, I try not to change anything else. I try to keep breathing normally. I try to keep everything contained. And then I'll set that stuff down. I'll take my knees a little bit wider, toes together to touch. When in doubt, widen it out. And stretch the hips back towards my heels in child's pose. I might stretch the arms forward. I might allow the forehead to rest on the floor, or maybe on my hands. And I can move or I can be still. Notice I'm moving a little bit. Feels nice to me. But if it feels better for you to just pause and just breathe, collect, whatever works. And then we'll come to our second side. As my base changes, everything else tries not to, okay? So I'm going to extend my left toes back behind me, keep them on the floor for a second, and I start to change that position of the right hand. And as the right hand changes, the left hand has to get more firm. That right knee has to get more firm, and maybe even tucking the toes under if you need more stability. And then keeping the hips pulling up towards your rib cage, keeping the low back long, lift that left leg with the glutes and the hamstrings, and then reach that right arm possibly forward if nothing else changes. And it might be a little wobbly, that's okay. But we have to keep our base continuously changing with us so it stays supportive. One more inhale here. And then exhale, hands and knees, child's pose or downward facing dog. Take a few breaths. Maybe moving, maybe being still. Great. And then coming back to all fours, please. Grabbing blocks, okay? If you have them, it's kind of nice to use them. And I'm going to take that right foot forward and wide outside of my right hand. And I'm going to come into lizard lunge, okay? So right foot will step forward and wide. And the nature of being on our knees is notice like my legs are a little bit too short. I need to lengthen my base a little bit more, okay? So I'm going to take that back knee, I'm going to lift it, toes are tucked under. I'm going to walk the back knee a little bit further back. And notice now how I've lengthened out my base a little bit more, right? I want that. And my base is also pretty wide, right? Notice how that front foot is stepping outside of that front hand. So I've got both hands on the inside of that foot. Lizard lunge, okay? Now, base matters. So your front toes, they're going to be facing a little bit wide, like we did in bridge. So the knee can kind of do the same thing. You have this nice wide base. And then from there, I press more, and I can lift more. And if you find like you're not high enough with the hands, you might need to bring the blocks a little bit higher, or you just might need to come up onto fingertips. Cool. And then take it easy. Don't go too far. This is not a race or a competition. You're just bending and re-straightening the front leg a few times. And I'm not lifting my base at all. I'm keeping the base really firmly pressing down, right? The base of that front heel, I keep it down. I lift the toes, and I just rock those hips forward and back a few times. I stop when I stop. I respect the parameters of my body today. And I just try to breathe. I just try to get that breath to be a little bit deeper. And if you notice as you start to move, you start to have a little more room, you might come down onto the hands instead of onto the blocks, or maybe onto the fingertips instead of the blocks. Great. Okay, now I want you to rebend the front knee, pause. Take that front hand a little bit wider, please. Okay, so again, widen out your base, especially when you're going to be using that base. So I'm just going to take that front hand a little bit wide. I'm going to bring that right hand just to my inner knee, right? I don't need it anymore. But instead of just like collapsing and just thinking about the twist, which sometimes happens, I want you to think about the standing arm that you're pressing out of. Turn away from it, right? Use your base to firmly turn away. And then hand to knee, nice little easy twist here, long low back. If you have more range, the back knee might bend and you might reach for the foot. A few slower breaths here. Working, twisting, lifting from the base, from your foundation. And then on an exhale, you'll let that go. Hands will come back to where they were, maybe back onto your blocks, possibly straightening out the front leg for a moment. And then sending it back into tabletop pose, back into child's pose or down dog. But I just want to take a moment. If your wrists are a little bit worked, if they're feeling a little fatigued, that's pretty normal, especially if you're newer to this practice. So take your time with this stuff. If you need to take a break, pause the video. You're at home. You can do whatever you want to. Just take care of yourself. Know that this stuff takes time to develop, okay? And then come back to all fours. Grab your blocks again if that's necessary or if that worked for you before. And we're going to step that left foot outside of our left hand and just come into our lizard lunge. Nice. Same thing, second side. Walk the back knee a little further back. Make sure you have a nice distance. Front toes are slightly turned out, so the knee's doing the same thing. Hands are supported how they need to be. And then keeping the base really solid, we're just moving back and forth a few times. I'm trying to keep my spine lifted and extended, and I'm trying to keep my movements matching the tone of my practice, right? I want to keep my breath slow. I want to keep my movements enjoyable. It's what my practice is really about. Cool. Now, once you feel more or less loosened up, you'll take that left hand, or that right hand, that base hand, just a little bit further away from you, okay? I always twist towards the front knee, right? Towards that front thigh. So right hand a little bit wider, maybe you palm the floor. Press the inner thigh away, lift the chest, lengthen the low back, find more extension from the foundation, and then possibly bending the back knee and reaching for the foot for corkscrew or lizard quad stretch. Nice. Notice I'm not turning down toward the floor. Notice how that bottom arm, I'm working up and out of it. Back knee pressing down. Front foot pressing down. One more big breath here. We'll exhale, we'll release that stuff. Hands and knees, possibly taking a moment to stretch or straighten out the front leg. And then we'll return to tabletop pose, and then you know the drill. Child's pose or down dog, maybe even sitting back on the heels to roll out the wrists. Okay, so now I want to start to work more of a standing balance, but I want to do this from our hands, from a lower base, okay? So before we just come to our feet and we work from there, I would like to start a little bit lower, okay? So from, again, your tabletop pose, you're going to take that right hand just a little further away from your shoulder, just a little forward of that shoulder, and I'm going to bring that right shin around behind me. Now remember, having a padding really does help, okay? Now, oftentimes when people come into side plank, that left foot's gonna extend behind you. I see this, right? You're turned down a little bit. You've got a little bit more of the collapsing in the chest, but that top arm's reaching. You got that back leg lifted, right? So I want you to think about, right, before we go into this standing balance, is that I'm turning away from the floor. The base that's on the floor, I'm using it to turn away from, right? And then from that turn away, I lift the bottom waist, I create length through my spine, and then possibly raise and lift that back leg up. Nice. Tall through my head, lifted through my chest, supported through my base. Stay for a big breath here. Maybe top hand stays on your waist or it reaches up. Good. And then we're going to release that. Hands to the floor, child's pose, roll out your wrists. And then again, coming forward to that tabletop pose, stepping that left hand just a little forward of the shoulder, spinning that left shin around behind you. So now you're going to see it from the back side, okay? And that right leg's going to extend behind us. Now the last part of the pose here, right? The last thing that most people forget about is that the base isn't firm enough. You're not turning away from that bottom arm enough. And then possibly you lift, reach, possibly extend the back leg. And I'm breathing. If I'm a little wobbly, that's okay. My base keeps re-shifting to keep supporting me. Nice. And then we slowly release with control. Last thing here in child's pose or whatever else you're working with. Roll out the wrists. The practice of yoga is to feel better in our bodies, right? Keep returning to that idea. Nice. Last push, friends. Okay, now we're going to start to work this from standing. Okay, so remove your block. Remove your blanket, have blocks at both the front and the back of your yoga mat. And we're going to come to standing from tabletop pose, just 1 foot at a time. Maybe you use those blocks to help first before you position them. And then we'll come all the way up to standing. Okay, so how I want to work this standing balance is I want to work it from Warrior 2. And I'm going to kind of set up Warrior 2, but if you're really lost and you need more help, I also have a video for that. Look at me, marketing myself, okay? So all I want you to do is take a wide-legged stance. I just want you to take your feet a little bit wider, a lot bit wider away from your hips, okay? With the toes turning towards me, towards the long side of your mat, okay? Now, with your tripod base of your feet, use them. Remember when we were seated and we were giving ourselves a nice little massage? I want you to feel with the feet, you're basing on them. Just like we did the hands, just like we did from the floor. I want you to feel that base into your feet, okay? Now, my right foot, my right toes, I want them to turn towards the front side of my mat, okay? So I'm going to turn those front toes forward, and I want my knee and my toes, just like we did in bridge pose, to be tracking in the same direction, okay? So as I start to bend that right knee, I want to make sure that it kind of keeps tracking a little bit wide. I don't want it to cave in. So when we start to have like interesting knee issues, I want to make sure that my toes, my base is kind of keeping what's on top of it really secure. Okay, same thing, back foot. Sometimes it gets little. It just doesn't get love enough. So I want you to really feel that back foot pressing firmly down into the floor. Reach the arms out. We start in our Warrior 2. Nice. Inhale here. Now I want you to take that right hand to your block that you have placed so carefully there, okay? And I want you to start to walk the back foot a little more in, okay? So you just kind of shorten up that stance. And once you start to shorten up that stance, I have to make my base a little wider again. So I walk that front hand forward, back foot in, front foot forward. You just kind of keep working that until there's no more weight on that back foot, okay? Now my base, it stays the same, right? That right foot, front foot, you really keep that front foot really firmly engaged. And then back toes stay the same direction as in Warrior 2. I just lift up. Notice this is a lot like that side plank variation we did from before. You might take your hand to your waist. You might reach the arm up. But I want you to feel what's pressing into the floor is actually what's lifting you up. Stay for a breath. Whoo, a little wobbly, that's okay. And then really slow, you're just gonna release that top foot to the floor, walk that front hand in, walk the back foot back. And then just all the way back up. We'll switch, but first, just kind of come back to neutral position, neutral standing position. Lift your hips, press your feet. Last side, okay? Back toes, turn them wide. So now I'm on my left foot. My left toes are turning to the back. And I'm going to start to bend that back knee. And I'm going to note, I want to track toes and knees in the same direction. Back foot really firmly pressing down. And those back toes are still pointing in the same direction they originally were in, okay? Arms reach wide. Now, when I come into my standing balance, really, it looks a lot like this. It looks a lot like this base here. It's just kind of tilted on its side. Same thing with side plank. So I don't want you to lose the base that's underneath of you. I want you to kind of keep all of that the same, but you're just going to be on one leg, okay? So first, we lift the front waist, we reach the arms, we bend the front knee. We'll take a full breath in just to collect ourselves. And then really slowly, we're going to bring that front hand, or left hand now, to that block, okay? We're going to start to walk that front hand a little forward, top hand to top waist, just to give yourself some proprioception. Back foot will step in. Now notice, I'm not doing something weird with that back foot. I'm going to kind of just keep stepping it forward in the same position because I want to keep this openness to my chest. Step the back foot in, walk the front arm forward. Now, remember what we just did in side plank, how oftentimes what will happen is you'll stay turned down. The base, you're not lifting away from it, okay? So I want when you start to walk, that front hand a little more forward, back foot a little bit more in, and then we start to transition, back leg lifts, standing base gets a little more solid, and I'm turning away from that standing arm. Top arm might reach. Nice. Half moon, Ardha Chandrasana. Stay for an inhale, see if you can lengthen through your head. And then reverse course. We're just going to slowly land that foot. Walk it back, walk it back, walk it back. And then all the way up. Grab your other block if you need to. Reach the arms up. Take a big breath in. And then we'll stretch. Hands will come down to blocks or to floor. We'll lift the hips. We'll keep the feet pressing, but maybe take a little movement or maybe stay a little still. Breath gets a little deeper. Awesome. And then all the way back up. Take one knee, one shin to the floor at a time. Sit back on your heels for a moment. Sit upright. Soften your shoulders. Again, lengthen your breath. Great. All right, to end, we'll just come onto our backs. We'll draw our right knee into our chest. Keep that left foot on the floor or extend that left leg out. Hands might come behind that right thigh. You might bend and re-straighten a few times. Nice, and then extend that heel toward the sky. Pull those toes slightly back towards your shin. Press up and out of that right heel. And then maybe start to lift your head and your chest. Maybe start to lift that extended foot or that extended leg. Maybe reach the arms forward. Big breath in here. See if you can press your base down a bit more, which is your low back. And then release. Bring the knee back and into the chest. And then take that right knee across to your left side if you're not going to break your mic pack. And right arm's going to reach out to the right. And just take a moment to twist a little more passively in your spine than you have been. And then you'll come back to center. Okay. Left knee will come into your chest. Left leg will reach toward the sky. Toes pulling back towards your shin, reaching out through your heel, just reimagining your tripod base there. Bending and re-straightening a few times. Now, with the foot that's on the floor, I was not being very conscious of this before, but with the leg that's on the floor, I want you to feel like it's a little more solid, right? The foundation of your body works what's going on top, right? Either that foot is pressing into the floor or that outstretched heel. Nice. And then extend through the leg. Start to lift the head and the chest and the shoulders. Maybe turn this a little more into some core work here by lifting that outstretched leg, maybe reaching the arms forward. If the head and neck feels wonky, maybe cradling the head. Nice. Stay here for a breath. Lift those shoulders. And then release. Knee comes back and in. And we twist it across to the right. As I twist to the right, my torso tries to twist to the left. Maybe even looking to the left. Bigger breaths than you had before. All right. And then all the way back to center. Hug both knees in towards the chest or the shoulders. Take a moment to rock a little bit right to left. Maybe rolling through the ankles and the toes a bit, just to feel the stuff that was just working. And then release arms and legs out to the side. We'll pause together for about 30 seconds. But if you have a little bit more time to stay and enjoy a longer shavasana or maybe even seated meditation, I invite you to it. But for now, just a little bit of silence just to collect. All right. If you have more time, please stay at least for another 3 to 5 minutes. But if 30 minutes is all you really have today, I get it. Draw the knees in, come to a side, and we'll come to an easy seat together. Take a moment just to reorient, maybe resting your hands on your knees or together at your heart. Thank you for practicing with me today. I hope you feel more grounded. I hope you feel like you have a good foundation to live your life from, right? Your base, what you believe, informs what you do. So keep coming back. We'll keep working together. Have a great rest of your day.